point in your education, you have definitely studied a cell. Maybe you looked at them under a microscope, maybe you drew diagrams, maybe you even made a candy model. But, may I ask, have you ever wondered how cells came to be the way they are? Well, my dear, scientists have wondered that too. In this video, I'm going to be discussing one of the proposed explanations for how cells came to be the way they are, known as We all know that the word bio, well, prefix bio, means life. But what you probably don't know is that endo means within, and the prefix sym, S-Y-M, means together. So if you put it together, it's living together within. Yeah.
Here we see the classic cellular life forms, the prokaryotes, cells without a nucleus, and eukaryotes, cells with a nucleus. Prokaryotes are the older of the two. Evolutionary scientists aren't exactly sure when along the evolutionary line eukaryotes came along or how they came to be. However, we do see that some of these organelles in the eukaryotic cells bear resemblance to ancient prokaryotic cells.
The similarity of the eukaryotic organelles to the prokaryotic cells gave birth to the idea that the eukaryotic organelles were once their own living cell.
Basically, in a nutshell, what's happening is the internal membranes of the eukaryote are sort of folded in order to suck up the prokaryote. Once inside, they have a sort of symbiotic relationship. Basically, they both benefit from this relationship. The prokaryote gets organic molecules from the eukaryote and makes ATP, which they both use. Also, the eukaryote gets an advantage amongst other cells. Scientists think that what happened is that eventually along the evolutionary timescale, the two organisms lost the ability to reproduce independently of each other, so they evolved into group organisms.
The lady you see is named Lynn Margulis, who lived from 1938 to 2011. She is the scientist that formulated what we know as endosymbiotic theory.
What differentiated Lynn Margulis from the other scientists in the 1960s was that she believed that symbiosis, or organisms having a two-way beneficial
Let's take a look at the prokaryote and the eukaryotic cell again. Notice that the prokaryote has two membranes, but only a loose cluster of DNA within the cell, while the eukaryote has enclosed DNA, as well as many organelles. Let's take a closer look at the mitochondria and the chloroplasts.
In case you've forgotten, the chloroplasts and the mitochondria are both involved in the energy production of the cell. The chloroplasts are what gather sunlight and turn it into glucose for plants, while the mitochondria turn the glucose into ATP.
Notice how the mitochondria and the chloroplasts both have their own DNA as well as a set of double membranes. Margulis had observed this while she was working at the Boston University Genetics and Cell Biology Department. She spent much of the rest of the 1960s convincing the scientific community of her argument that symbiosis was an unrecognized but major force in the evolution of prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. In 1970, she published her argument in her first book, The Origin of Eukaryotic Cells. At first, her ideas were received with skepticism from the scientific community. Let's take a look about why. The major evidences for endosymbiotic theory are that mitochondria have similar DNA to modern prokaryotes, that they have double membranes similar to modern prokaryotes, that they divide, the cell divides in the same way that bacteria do by way of binary fission, which is basically asexual reproduction, and that they have similar size and a similar shape to modern prokaryotes. However, scientists are a very skeptical group of people, and it's very difficult to convince them fully of anything. Like any scientific theory, this theory has been challenged many times since it was first published.
The scientists opposing the theory's main argument is that the way that the RNA replicates in the protein synthesis while DNA is separating is different than in the mitochondria than the bacteria. One of the other areas of the theory that's often challenged is that there's debate over how anaerobic prokaryotes that die in the presence of oxygen, versus organic prokaryotes, the prokaryotes that need oxygen. There's debate as to how they evolved to live together. Recently at scientific centers, research facilities, facilities, universities, and scientific journals, there's been lots of work and research done on endosymbiotic theory.
Recently, there was a study done at the University of Wisconsin about endosymbiotic theory. It was led by Dr. David Baum of the botany department. When Dr. David Baum compared the eukaryotic cell to the bacteria, he saw that the bacteria was much more similar to the nucleus of the cell, in his opinion. He believes that the nucleus of the cell is actually the oldest part instead of the mitochondria and the chloroplasts. In Dr. Baum's studies, he proposes the hypothesis that the eukaryotes evolved from an ancient prokaryotic cell that extended extracellular protrusion that gave rise to the modern cytoplasm and the modern eukaryotic cell. As you can see, there have been other most recent studies that show the acceptance of endosymbiosis theory by the scientific community, and that it is a legitimate theory. Today, endosymbiosis is the most widely accepted theory for how cells came to be.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful and